Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Charity Cup, the second online event in the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour. And today we are covering the final match between Magnus Carlsen from Norway and Jan Krzysztof Duda from Poland. This is going to be a super exciting matchup. Both these guys come to the table to fight. They diversify their openings. Games are mixed with positional and tactical ideas. Timestamps are in the video player because the finals are 2 days. And the format, on the first day, they play a best-of-4 rapid. The second day, they also play a best-of-4 rapid. If it's all square after that, they play some blitz, and then they play an Armageddon game. And again, my voice sounds like, I suddenly inhaled like 5,000 cigarettes because of spring allergies. So what are you going to do? That's how Gotham sounds now. We're going to kick things off with the first match. They drew the first game they played, as you can see from the score. Let's get into the second game of rapid. Jan Krzysztof begins the game with a Queen's Gambit, and we have a semi-Slav defense by Magnus Carlsen. He is employing the triangle pawns versus the Queen's Gambit, as well as the knight on f6 and the knight on d7. Extremely flexible setup by Black. You don't know if Black is going to take and play b5. You don't know if Black is going to play b6 and bishop b7. Also, let me know which Gotham voice you prefer, loud and theatrical, or deep, philosophical, raspy, maybe smoking a nice pipe. So White plays a bunch of natural moves, so does Black. But here it gets a little bit strange because Magnus hasn't castled yet. And so normally what White does is play b3, Black plays queen e7, bishop b2, castles, and then the players bring their rooks to the middle. But Duda attacks the center right away. He doesn't let Magnus castle. He trades like this, and when the knight comes here, he puts his queen on h4. Now, I've played like this myself before, but normally, when I'm putting the queen on h4, the king is already here, so it kind of makes sense, right? But the queen on h4 by itself, does that make sense? For whom does that make sense? Does it make sense for Black? Does it make sense for White? So Magnus is like, well, I'm not castled yet, so I should just play c5. I'm activating my bishop, right? Duda plays rook d1, queen c7, and a couple moves later takes on c5. Bishop takes c5. And the players have an interesting structure. White has 3-3, so White has no center pawns, just 3 and 3. Black has 4 and 2 and a center pawn. The 3 on 2 should be better for White in endgames, but I don't know. I feel like we're pretty far from one right now. Obviously, Duda wants to play rook c1 and b4 in a perfect world and try to push, and that's exactly what he does. And literally exactly what he does. So I would say that here, White is better. I mean, his plans have worked, and oftentimes in a situation where you do have a 3 on 2 and you have a rook and a queen opposite one another, moves like c5 become very appetizing. The point of c5 is that obviously Black cannot do this because knight b3, and suddenly the bishop is just under arrest, right? There's just nothing we can do here. So, but Duda does it this way. And the problem with doing it this way is that the bishop gets to e5. And you say, well, what? I don't understand, Levy. Well, if takes, bishop e5. Yes, but then there would have been c6. And now you see that queenside pawn majority, the 3 on 2. That's why I always say it's advantageous, because in the long term, that's what's going to happen. White is going to break through. Now, Duda tries to do this in the game as well. Duda just does it in a slightly different way. Here's the problem with the way he does it. He's lost time. If we compare the two positions, right, the position that we just covered, Duda's just getting to c6, but because Duda wasted just one move, Magnus is able to get enough defenses going that the move c6 now is no longer scary. Why is it no longer scary? Because you cannot successfully get your knight to d4 either, because Black plays knight d5 and just begins chopping everything down and then will win this pawn. So basically, this all comes down to the fact of whether or not Duda can successfully sustain his c-pawn. If Duda plays like knight a5, bishop f3, right, and just defends that c-pawn for the rest of this game and maybe gets through, he's going to win. If not, he's going to lose. Magnus takes the bishop and plays rook d3, basically just acting like this bishop is not locked out of the game and can take, right, can take all this stuff. And Duda here has to play a4, apparently. This is the only move. According to Stockfish, Duda plays bishop e4, gives up the e3 pawn, and gives up the a3 pawn. So Magnus is like, all right, you got this, congratulations, what about your pawns? And as it so happens, the one move mate threat, there was nothing. And the final move of this game, I talked about it, if this pawn falls, probably Duda will lose. Bishop takes c6. And Duda resigned. So Magnus has struck first in the first rapid matchup. And what went wrong for Duda is literally, this is all you need against Magnus. One move of hesitation. That's it. That's how good Magnus is. to conjure up this perfect defense, understanding that the opponent is about to barrel forward here with the bishops and the rooks. He chops off one rook to remove one defender of the white position. Then he plays, you know, rook d8, and I mean, just easy peasy, crazy. So this is the third rapid game on the first day. So Magnus just won with black, right? So now Magnus is really gonna try to bring it home. He plays a 4 knights English with g3. There are like 2 main lines here. Black can play d5, black can play bishop b4, and black can play everything else. And here, generally, white plays bishop g2 in castles, but Magnus plays the second most popular move in the position by about a 6-1 margin, which is the move knight d5. And what you're about to witness here is something very funny. Black does not take this knight because allowing white control of the c-file and taking this pawn is just not considered good. But white just leaves the knight on d5 anyway. White doesn't care. He's like, my knight is staying there. It will stay there. It will stay there as long as it has to. All right. This knight also kicked out your bishop, so this bishop will become a target for my pawns, right? Because black moves the bishop to b4, just so you understand, so that in the future black can take and be very solid on dark squares. But when the knight has been moved, now that bishop suddenly has no role in the game, and soon we are going to see e3, a3, b4, d4. Now, bishop g4, pinning the knight, right? So d4 is now impossible because the knight no longer supports it. So Magnus kicks it out. Magnus actually pushes the pawns in front of his king because he thinks it's important to getting the bishop away from pinning the knight, which is trying to control the center, to play the move d4. Isn't it amazing how logical chess is sometimes? Well, when they play it. Bishop back to b6, and here, this move has been played about 10 times and scores 32% for white. So black wins more than 2/3 of the time, but Magnus plays it. Magnus is like, I'm going to rewrite history. I'm going to improve on this statistic. Knight h4, I'm going to go get your second bishop. Duda plays bishop e4, and then plays this nifty knight move to target this knight. And now we get this position. Now what's funny is that Stockfish here thinks the knights are better than the bishops when it first starts thinking. It doesn't really see a way that white can actually make use of any of this. Excuse me. And even though white can play some expansion moves, black controls everything. Black controls a4, a5. Black controls the pawns. I mean, everything moving forward. There's just nothing that can be done, right? So rook e8, d5. And now, again, who benefits from a closed position? The guy with the pieces that like to move in diagonals, or the guy that's pieces can jump around the closed position? Probably the other guy, right? The one with the jumping pieces. So bishops versus knights is fascinating, but none of these pawns can move. So you start looking at the position. How is Magnus going to get through? Certainly he can't play b4, c5. I mean, b4, a5 makes sense, but then what? Takes. Okay, well, Duda just turns the game to the king side here, right? He plays rook f8 here. It would be very interesting to see if he could successfully play f5 at some point. That seems to be very logical. Then Magnus would physically restrict f5, because if he doesn't, once black gets f5, black just completely takes over the game. So, knight g6, knight h4, g5. I mean, Duda seems to be doing everything right. He's completely suffocating Magnus here. But again, he kind of hesitates. He's like, I don't really know what to do now. What do I do? Queen h2, king g7. What do I do? I mean, okay, Magnus is playing some moves. Okay, nothing's happening. Oh, Magnus set a trap. You can't take this because rook a1, b5, I take, and now I'm getting in. So Magnus lulled Duda into a state of kind of like, not much is happening. Got Duda to lock away his queen for a couple moves, got him to put his knight into the pawn, and I told you all a long time ago, Magnus will play this move a5. But what happens after ba5, ba5? That's not the idea. The idea is to sack the a-pawn, to remove the control of the c5 square. Magnus uses a pawn sacrifice to bulldoze his way into the black position, and somehow the marooned queen on h6 is unable to participate in the defenses. And if Duda plays something like rook c8, I'm playing queen a4. Nobody can protect the knight, because if you push this, if you move the knight all the way back, I'm barreling in. I have my rook, my pawns, my bishop support from far away. Queen is always threatening an infiltration. Rook maintains pressure on the semi-open file. And this didn't exactly happen, but this did. And pieces started flying all over the place. You can't take because this. But somehow Magnus now has, look at this. Magnus has C and B pawns just walking into the position. Bishop b4. I mean, this is an opening of the position only beneficial for white. This is a very good example of why bishops are better than knights in these kinds of positions, right? Rook d3, a3, And check out this bind. I mean, when everything is said and done, look at this bind, c7, b6. And the craziest thing is it's still a game. It's still a game. It just looks like it's trending in the wrong direction for black. Rook takes e3 apparently, and Stockfish struggles to find a way for white to win. But we have rook d3, and I mean, Magnus just brings his pieces in, right? Blocks out the rook from getting to the king, and all he has to do is at some point cash in. So what does he do? Trades the queens, gets the bishop in, ready to take on b7, and Duda resigns. Duda resigns because everything has been covered. Bishop b7 is coming, and that's it. Duda loses the first match by a score of 2.5 out of 3 for Magnus. So Magnus, I mean, sometimes wins games honestly out of nowhere, like minus 0.4 position for black, seemingly nothing happening for white, lulls Duda into a state of just sort of like not finding a way forward, absent-mindedly locks his queen out of his own position, and then here come the white pawns barreling in on the queen side. This is how you play close positions. You try to find where your pawn majority is, right? Where your pawn structure faces is which way you should be playing. As I scratch my throat raw here making this recap. So we go to day number 2. It's a brand new day. Duda's down and he's got to win the rapid portion, right? So he's got the white pieces. How's he going to start? Plays e4, and we have a Rossalimo Sicilian. I mean, hey, if you're going to play an opening to try to play for a win, this is one as, you know, as good as any. Mainline position. Notice that Duda is delaying the capture of the knight on c6. Fine. He's delaying it. d4. This position has been reached several hundreds of times. Magnus here plays d5, counterattacking the middle and putting his knight smack in the middle on e4. Again, position has been played before by the likes of Magnus. I think there was a game Caruana Carlsen, not in the World Championship, but at some point. Dubov games as well. Bishop e3 is a very highly scoring move. And I think from this position, white has never lost. I think this position has been reached maybe 7 or 8 times, couple of draws, couple of wins for white. And I think the move here is knight fd2. The point of knight fd2 is that oftentimes black takes, white takes, and this bishop is just locked out of the game. I mean, that's just the truth. It's kind of a passive position for black. But Magnus plays this absurd-looking bishop e6. The point being that if you take, well, you just justified me putting my bishop there. But the other point being that if you play f3, then after takes, I mean, I'm just going to go bishop f5, rook c8. We kind of get a similar position. Duda plays knight b3, and this has never been played before. The point is that you want to play f3 and trap the knight. The only way to stop this is to lash out with the f-pawn. Why? Because now you go danger levels, right? Because now f5, f4, and the bishop is hit. You don't want to make this trade because that activates the rook. I mean, there's just no reason to do this. So bishop back to c1, and Magnus is like, yeah, go ahead and take my knight. You want it so bad, take my knight. What? What do you mean, I want it so bad? Just fe4? Yeah, apparently this position is better for black. Because black will just go here, and now white can't move. And not to mention, if you just wait around a little bit, there's f3 coming in a moment, right? Like you're just gonna continue to bulldoze. So somehow you trap the knight, you can't even take it. I mean, what? How is this like playing against Magnus? Nothing is as it seems. It's like a wall of illusions. So now the knight escapes, and now it just comes right back. Huh? Why did he go here if he couldn't even escape? Well, he wants to weaken the white position. He wants the pawn to go forward, so now the king is a bit weaker, and here we go. It looks like everything Duda is doing is correct. I mean, he just won a piece from the opening. How can this possibly be wrong? He is up 3 points of material. Can somebody please explain this to me? How can this possibly be wrong? The queen goes back, and now Magnus plays f3. And Magnus is winning, and apparently f3 is not even the right move. I apologize. Bishop d5, queen d3, everything is fine. There was some other small situation. Yeah. Taking this pawn was not the best. Apparently knight c3 was good, and then here the best move for black is this e3. So it's e3, f3. Got my variations mixed up. Obviously here you have to play f3, and now white has a very difficult choice. You either allow f2 or you take. So what do? Bishop e3. All right, we don't allow f2, but now here comes f takes g2. Now the king has no pawns in front of him. And then here comes queen e6. Bishop f2, rook f3. Oh my god, look at this rook f3. I mean, rook f3, just incredible. What a dynamite shot. Rook f3. If you take with the knight, I'm playing queen h3. It's mate. Bishop g3 apparently is the only way to stop it here. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. I think there was something even better here. I think Magnus could have slow played it, just improving his position, activating one more of his pieces, and computer thinks that despite a 2-pawn advantage for white, it's -3 for black. So, but Magnus tries to go for a dynamite strike, but this queen sacrifice actually, you know, allows Duda to defend for a little while longer. But as it turns out, this was possible. I think they both overlooked this move. Bishop g3, after queen g3, knight bd2. If you try to come back, there is queen e2, queen h1, and the king is safe. Somehow, by some miracle. So bishop f2, rook f3 was actually not the way to go. You had to slow play it, which normally Magnus does very well, just turning the pressure on his opponent. But now he plays bishop h6, now he brings his rook, and he just doesn't look back. And in this position, he uncorks, rook takes f2. I mean, Magnus just turning back the clock, playing like 19th century chess. Look at this, all the pieces flying. Queen h3, a5. Sometimes the final collapse of a position comes from the complete opposite side of the board, a5. Incredible move. What is the point? Well, if the pawn gets all the way in, the queen will have a hook, and then it will go and take everything, right? Sometimes the queen needs a helping hand. If you play knight takes a5 in this position, I take with check, I take this, I take everything else. So rook g2, queen takes h4, queen takes d4, and Magnus just, I mean, he is pissed. Look at this man. I mean, he's taken everything, right? Queen d5. He might take another pawn. He might just go for the king. And he does take a fourth pawn. And Duda resigns. I mean, are you kidding me? Magnus just literally played an idea where he gets his knight voluntarily stuck in the center of the board. When you do it, you're a clown because you lost the knight. When he does it, he's the greatest player of all time. Literally moves out of the way, realizes he's trapped, and then just... I mean, how can this possibly work? How is this possible? Just loses a piece and just bulldozes his opponent. Makes a slight inaccuracy, even for the world champion, thinking that he's going for a knockout punch. Could have just turned the gears a little bit longer. But folks, this is terrible. Duda's now lost 3 games. He's lost every game of this recap so far. Duda now has to get 2.5 out of 3 points. He has to win 2 games to force a blitz playoff. I mean, no chance, right? Come on. This is crazy. I mean, Magnus is on another level. So Duda plays the Caro Kann. You got to play for a win. Let's play the Caro Kann. And Magnus plays this line. He plays knight f3, d3, which is a new idea that Leela and Stockfish both really like. The point is that white is trying to go for this kind of an endgame, where despite losing the right to castle, the inherent advantage of having developed a piece and black unable to develop a piece naturally is better for white. Leela thinks this is very comfortable, plus 0.3 for white. Of course, still very drawable, but Duda has to play for a win. So what does he do? He plays g6, looking for a modern. We have takes, and Magnus turns this into an exchange Caro Kann. I've never seen that before. I mean, I figured, like, if you're going to do that, you should probably do it, like, why would you go d3, d4? But okay. So Magnus plays in a kind of a weird way. It's already getting really weird. I mean, this looks like a 500 playing bishop h6. I mean, what? No, you're not supposed to play bishop h6. But again, Duda's looking to imbalance the game as much as possible. If queen d2, this knight will come to f5, black will castle, and not have a fianchettoed bishop. Again, don't try this at home. Do not play like this, all right? I don't know what they're doing. Look at this. This legitimately looks like it gets the elo game, right? White played d3, now plays d4. The bishop is on h6 for some reason. A super random h3. The bishop goes to b5, and then goes back to e2 a couple moves later. Huh? But sometimes you got to get weird with it. And by the way, the tension, all right? The tension, the physical tension between these two bishops, no one's taking anybody else. Ridiculous. All right? By the way, they're still staring. Oh, now they're blocked. Now they're staring at each other again. Now one of them has to do something because he's not protected. Bishop g7. And look, for all of Duda's shenanigans, he's just in a position where he is worse. It's +1 for Magnus. He has an advantageous structure. He has the bishop pair. And the best move here for white is to go h4, h5. And he does exactly that. Here comes h4. Rook e7. I would play h5. And that's it. I mean, Duda is on his last leg. Magnus is going to convert this game and win. But Duda says, not so fast. e5. That pawn is supported by my entire army. I'm now going to open up the position. I've got the e-file under control with both my rooks. Let's go. Knight e5, and we have bishops versus knights. You should not take this because white will just come back. Like, for example, white will go here. And again, Magnus doesn't care about a draw. He will torture Duda forever in this endgame. So knight d6 played, rook f1. Now, rook f1 is a peculiar move. I don't know what rook f1 is. I don't know if this is a mouse slip. Maybe there was some sort of deep idea. Yeah, I don't know. I'm fascinated to know what the point of this move was. Maybe Magnus wanted to play bishop d4, but he can't because this check comes and then he loses this. So maybe that was the idea. Rook f1 is to go bishop d4. Looks like a bit of a mouse slip though, but okay. Knight here, bishop e2, and queen d4. Okay, so the idea wasn't bishop d4. I guess he adjusted the plan. Now Duda's like, all right, we're equal. So how am I going to play this for a win? First of all, bishop takes a6. If you take, there is this. So we have rook e6. There apparently f4 here is even stronger. And again, we see a case of the f-pawn attacking the king, just like we saw the last game. So rook e6 and knight d8. Duda is down 2 pawns, but all of a sudden, he's going to win some material here. Magnus plays bishop takes d5. You can't take the queen because it's pinned. Magnus is 3 pawns up. Rook d5, queen b3. Takes, knight back to f7. All right, Magnus Carlsen is completely winning if he plays the move f4. f4 wins the game on the spot. Why? Because the queen has to protect the rook. If the queen goes back to f6, there is queen b8 check, and if king g7, bishop d4, and that's it. That is all she wrote. All right, or he. I don't know if, maybe he has that job now, but someone's writing something. So bishop d4, Magnus Carlsen wins this match with f4. But if you look down at the video player, there is more time because f4 was not played. Instead, he did it this way first, and all of a sudden, Duda's actually getting back into this game. He is actually defending his back rank, all right? He's playing f4, queen c4. White is still better. I mean, white is like down a piece, but has pawns for it. Knight g3 check, takes, right? Queen d5, king f7. How is this possible? Takes. I mean, Duda almost has no pieces left. How on earth is this video going to go any longer? Magnus is now just going to push his a-pawn. a5. He's just pushing his a-pawn. He can't lose. a6. I mean, this is insane. But a6 is a horrible blunder. Because queen a7 and white can't stop mate. White now, well, white can't stop mate by trading the queens. But suddenly rook b6. Oh my gosh. Magnus has blundered. He's going to lose his advanced pawn. He is going to lose his g-pawn in the future unless white stays back and defends it. And this endgame is just losing. It's losing because you're going to get this pawn at some point. And Magnus resigns because this pawn is always covered. This king is coming this way. King d3, g5. I mean, it just doesn't matter. White runs out of moves. White simply runs out of moves. And black wins. Duda, out of nowhere, from the depths of hell, completely getting dominated, wins a game. All right, Magnus is going to try to put him away now. We have e4, we have e5, and we have whatever the heck this is. I don't know what this is. Duda's like, I just won a game that was completely nuts. Let's get weird with it. Here we go, g3. We have d5 from Magnus, and he kind of drops back with the queen. Both players castle, and we're on opposite sides. So it's safe to say someone's going to lose. All right, someone's going to lose this game, and Duda wastes absolutely no time in getting us started with one of the players losing by playing the move b4. b4 is covered by 3 pieces in the black position, which means that it will promptly be captured. However, this is going to be open. So here's bishop d2, a3, rook e1, bishop f7. The players are making their preparations, and knight e4. The queen is under attack. We have queen to a4. Knight attacks the queen. Queen slides back. And now the bishop volunteers as a tribute for capture. Why? Because if you try to trap the knight, I might trap your queen. I also have the incredible knight g5 here, which is just a ludicrous move. The point of this is that if you take it, I check you, and then I play c4, and now your queen is actually stuck. It's actually trapped. So bishop b4, volunteering himself for capture. If queen b4, obviously there's rook a7. I mean, there's all sorts of crazy attacking ideas in the future. You could even play knight e5. Bishop takes b7 is coming. Crazy stuff. So Magnus tries to play knight c6. Everything's fine. Duda says, no, everything's not fine, Magnus. I'm tired of losing to you, you clown. Knight g5. Here we go. F takes g5. Check, king b8, and pure savagery, knight d7. Magnus can play king a8, but after c4, queen takes b4, bishop takes c6. I mean, he's getting Wreck-It Ralphed out here. Rook b1, this attack is absolutely monstrous. The rooks on the A and B file are ready for blood. So he decides to just take the knight, all right? Take the knight, take the pawn. He's still up 3 points of material, but the attack is not over. Duda continues ripping apart the defenses of the queen side. Queen b6 played. Why queen b6? Because if you end up doing one of these two moves, first of all, f7 is falling, and second of all, the b file is opening up. So if you do this, then I have takes, kabam, and you're pinned and you're going to lose your bishop. Same tactic. So Magnus decides to play queen b6, c3, pick up on b4, queen e7 attacks the rook. Duda just won in 26 moves. Duda just absolutely demolished Magnus in 26 moves. Where has this guy been this entire time? He lost the first rapid match, 2.5-half. He was down today, and then he wins 2 massive games on demand. They draw the final rapid game, which means it's time for 2 games of blitz. You thought this was going to be a short recap. I thought this was going to be a short recap. No, I didn't, because I knew how many games were going to be going in, but I kept you strung along. Now, first game of blitz, here we go, and this is a big one. Duda has to hold with black before he tries to win with white. Magnus plays one of his pseudo-Catalans, all right, playing like a delayed c4, and now he plays it. Duda plays pawn takes. They trade knights, and now Magnus has this Catalan-esque pressure on the position. But some moves later, Magnus just does this. Very boring. They both have d-pawns. They both have AB, and they both have FGH. But one guy is playing white. And generally, when you have the white pieces in a completely symmetrical position, bishops, there's no knights, right? You can apply more pressure. And so that's what Magnus tries to do. He's basically, this entire game, no disrespect whatsoever, is just trying to harass Duda. And Duda's a pretty handsome guy, but you shouldn't harass people. So Magnus is just basically doing that. I mean, he's just very slowly trying to play easy moves, advancing very, carefully into Duda's position, hoping that Duda at some point overcommits and gives him a target, like the move a4, takes, and maybe in the long run, this pawn will be a weakness, right? Takes, and now we see that. Magnus has successfully gotten Duda to get himself a weakness. b4 avoids any danger, but white is slightly better here. White controls the black infiltration spots of the rook, but white's rook can go anywhere, right? And he will. Here's rook a6, g4, rook b6. Now, Duda, to his credit, is still defending unbelievably well. I mean, he's basically not allowing Magnus any leeway whatsoever. I mean, like, how is Magnus going to win this position, right? Like, what's he going to do? It's complete symmetry. Literally, they have the same pawns. So what do you do if you're playing white? How can you possibly win? Finally, Magnus gets fed up and tries to trade the bishops, thinking that he's winning this pawn by force. He's not wrong. He is winning this pawn by force. The problem is, he's also, if he's taking it, losing his rook by force. Magnus completely overlooks this. He doesn't lose the rook, but Magnus completely overlooks the fact, maybe, that when this happens, he can't actually take on d5. Maybe he didn't exactly overlook it. Maybe he thought that he would still win it in the future, but all of a sudden, Duda's just back in the game, and Duda's making his own threats. The pace of the game is completely changing. If you play rook b7, I play king e6. You play here, I go here, right? That doesn't work. So rook a6. And now both sides have about 15 seconds on the clock here, because it's blitz. 10, 15 seconds on the clock. Rook e1, king d3, rook d1 check, bishop d2, rook f1. There's nothing happening. They're just shuffling. Make the draw, guys. Magnus thinks there's enough time. Rook a5. Now, if you're Duda here, you just guard this pawn. You just play king c6, rook a6, king d7, and that's all you do. Unfortunately here, the devil on your shoulder sometimes talks to you in chess or in life. Sometimes you got to ignore that devil. And Duda sees that in this position, there's a tactic. He thinks that after takes, he's just doing well, and he's not wrong. But the thing is, after bishop takes g3, rook d5 check, right? He's also doing well, because he can always go back and protect himself. The problem is that when he plays bishop takes g3, he completely misses that it's not this that's going to move or this. It's king d2. And now he has a problem because 2 pieces are under attack. He goes back and counterattacks the rook. He counterattacks the rook, but now he can no longer escape. One of his pieces is going to die. He tries to be a little creative here with the move g3, but unfortunately this will not get you a queen, as white can play f3, and Duda resigns the game. Completely insane. He was holding Magnus for 50 moves of this game, 48 moves of this game. He was literally shuffling his rook and his king. That's all he had to do. All he had to do. But with 5 seconds on the clock, temptation got the best of him. His first instinct took over, which was animalistic. Go chop down this pawn. And he pays for it tragically with the king move, right? Anytime you put a piece in a hanging situation, always make sure that the only other thing you have left can't also be targeted. Because if that happens, you now have 2 hanging pieces. And you can't cash in on your tactic. I'm not teaching Duda. I'm teaching y'all. Which means that Duda now has to win on demand with white. I mean, come on, he's had no problem doing that this match. So Duda plays e4. Magnus plays a Caro-Kann. Oh my gosh. Magnus has to win or draw. He plays the Caro-Kann. Duda plays a fantasy. Plays a fantasy variation. I recently lost to this. E6. And now, in this position, my opponent over the board played bishop e3 against me. Duda turns this into a French. He turns this into a French defense, kind of. This is straight out of a French defense. You say how? I'll show you how. Look, almost the exact same position. In fact, it is the exact same position. Let me just click back to the normal game. We're back in the normal game. You probably didn't notice it, but look at the highlighted move. See? It changes. It's the same thing. Now we're in a French defense. We're in a classical French. So Duda here is like, all right, I'm mad I lost that game. Screw this. H4. I'm playing this for a win. Magnus, you trash, most overhyped world champion of all time. F6, A3. Duda's also fulfilling a little quest here of putting as many pawns on dark squares as possible, right? He's got this beautiful dark squared wall. We have A5 from Magnus, and Duda plays knight G3. It's very clear what Duda wants, right? He wants knight G3, bishop to D3. H5 here would have been an interesting idea as well. But Magnus is ready. Sometimes the best way to stop a flank attack is directly in the middle or on the opposite side. Magnus just doesn't think that there's anything here. Takes, and Duda plays knight G5. Oh my goodness, this is crazy. Knight G5 is an insane move. If you take it, I'm going to open this with a tempo. So I'm going to take check. This is a different type of Greek gift. Now you go here, king H7, queen H5 is coming. I mean, white is... there must be a win. Or G6 to stop the king from escaping. Now do you know what white is threatening? White is threatening rook H8 check. King H8, check, and mate. Oh my gosh. Duda, don't do him like that. Knight takes C6. This is crazy. I mean, the knight has jumped in. It's going to get the rook, but there's pandemonium all over the board. Magnus takes the bishop with check and then takes. Okay, deep breath. Duda is a pawn up on the advantage scale, but he's no longer going to attack. As you can tell, his bishop is gone. His pawns can't make any more progress. He now has to pause, chill for a second, and try to get the better of this position. Apparently, only rook b1 here is good for white. Duda plays bishop d2. The problem with bishop d2 is that this is always hanging. I guess he's trying to play rook b1 anyway. Magnus plays bishop g4 here, which goes to show you why putting 2 pawns side by side like this is really dangerous, because the bishop gets in on the color in between them, and now nobody can stop the bishop. Pawns can't go backwards. And what's going to happen next is rook e8, and Duda's stuck in the middle. Duda still goes in, stops rook e8, and attacks the bishop. But Magnus is a GothamChess subscriber. Magnus knows about danger levels. So now he takes on b2. And now Magnus knows about danger levels again. Rook e8 check. A move that was impossible because of the queen is possible because this queen has to protect the rook. King f1. We take the bishop. We take the pawn check. We take the knight. And one guy has 2 rooks. But unfortunately, the game is over because the other guy has a million pawns, and this king is extremely weak. And Duda resigns because knight f3 is coming, queen e1 is coming at the very least to force a draw. And that's it. Magnus gets his revenge on Duda by winning in less than 26 moves, this time in 24 moves, and he is the champion of the Charity Cup 2022. Never in doubt, you would think. Definitely never in doubt after he was up 1-0 and up 1-0 overall, but Duda made it super interesting. So big congratulations to Magnus, commiserations to Duda, although he made it extremely exciting. And that concludes the second tournament in the Meltwater Tour for this year. Magnus wins again. Shocking. Who would have expected it, honestly? I'm going to go take care of my dog. You all have a great rest of your Sunday or whenever you're watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Get out of here.